Morning all and welcome to this week's Jump Recruitment discussion. First of all, a big thank you to all those who attended the World Staffing Summit last week. I now have access to the recordings if you didn't and you want to watch, or if you simply want to watch again. They'll be on the website as soon as possible. I'm just trying to download them at the moment. But this week, we're discussing time. And as Mr. Jacobs knows, time management is always a crucial thing. But we also want to look at the lack of time. It's the only thing we can't truly buy, but we waste an awful lot of it. Today we're going to try and put some help into getting some timing back for you. So, Paul, can you just put yourself on mute for a minute because you've got a very noisy background there. So, the Development Academy last year, Feb 2021, did a poll on 500 employees across a variety of industries to understand time management. So here are some key facts. 18% of people have a dedicated time management system. 82% of people do not have a dedicated time management system. They just use lists and their email box, if at all. The least successful time management system is dealing whatever comes up, which is mainly what people put on their to-do lists. And 25% of people just deal with whatever seems to be important at the time. 20% of people feel that their working day is under control. Wow, only 20%. 33% of people use a to-do list to manage their tasks. But as we said, only 25% actually deal with what's coming up. 20%, 1 in 5 people carry out a monthly time audit to review how they spend their time and therefore can maximize their time wisely. When asked how many times per day people looked at their email box, 1 in 6, 16% said they live in their email box and they work permanently outside of their email box. On average, people waste around about 1.5 hours, 91 minutes each day on tasks that aren't important to their role. And over 10%, 10.5% of people waste more than a third, 37.5% of their time on tasks and meeting that are not important to their role. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're joined by, as you can hear, by Paul Jacobs. He's wandering around the office, so it's background noise because that's just Paul wandering around, and Dave Pye. Heather's on client site, I believe, and I'm not sure where Paul Sharp is today at this moment in time. So, let's have a look at how we can start to save you guys time and start to bring time management back for you. So guys, as a manager, if you look back, what was the thing that took most of your time each day?
I think apart from smoking a lot at the time, I would suggest that it was spending most of my day with my people, really. And I don't say that in a sort of frivolous fashion. I dedicated my time to working very closely with my close colleagues. And I would say the second element of where I spent my time was consistently talking to my clients. Sounds a fairly basic thing to say, but I would, without a shadow of doubt, particularly when I sort of grew up and became a senior manager, ultimately a CEO, I maintained that view that my role was to spend time making sure that I was supporting my people and doing everything I could to ensure that they were able to perform as well as they could. In fact, I used to say to my senior management team that our job was to support our people and we worked for them, not the other way around. So that's always been my view about spending time. It's all about looking after the great people in your business, enabling them to be as productive and as happy as they can be. Because as I think everybody knows, if you've got a great team around you, surprisingly, he says in inverted commas, you have a hugely successful business. So that's essentially where I would have absolutely spent most of my time.
Dave?
Yeah, I was hopeless when I first became a manager. So all mine were the wrong things to do. I became a manager at 24 because my boss was summarily dismissed. And the only reason I became a manager was that I was the guy that answered the phone to head office. And the famous Vic Groves of VNG said, right, you can run the office then. And I had no idea. And these were in the days when the two management tools were the Abacus and shouting very loudly. That was all we had. So I didn't know what I was doing. So I used to make lists, endless lists of the things I had to do. There wasn't a time management system, I don't think then. There wasn't even any internet. And then I used to keep going back to lists. And it took me a long while to realize that actually, to Paul's point, it was the people side of things that I wasn't doing particularly well, but I was managing upwards because I needed to please my bosses. I thought I did. And I was also making all of these lists and client lists and contractor lists and where we were placing people. And in an office of 14 at 24, I was the second youngest, but I was the boss. So I learned the hard way by making just loads of mistakes on how to manage time.
So I think on that sort of front, I'll echo what Paul has said and what you said, Dave. When I started as a manager, I was horrific. And I think the biggest thing that sort of took an enormous amount of my time was thinking that I'm a one-man army. If anyone had a problem, it became my problem. I owned the problem. I took the problem on.
Yeah.
I did the work that would then deliver that problem back. And what I wasn't doing was empowering my people. And it was not until later that I started to understand that if they owned their own problems, then it started to help them. And so once I changed from being a what, why manager, what are you doing, why are you doing that, give it to me, I'll do it, and changed to a how manager, how can you do that, how can I help you, then I started to get massive swathes of my time back. So time to me when it started was a real big issue. But what became sort of abundantly apparent that time was in short supply, and the more I tried to achieve by myself, the less time I had, but the more I tried to make my team achieve, the more time I got, the more time they got, and together we became more powerful, we became more productive. And so that empowerment and delegation was the real important thing that created time for me. And that to me started on then we train the people to be better than I was at what I was doing and delegating the right things out. So it was all about your people and delegating the right things to your people. So here's a question. When we looked at businesses that we coach and mentor, where do you, or where do your managers, or where do you see your managers could create more time?
Where do you think managers could create more time?
Yeah.
I mean, this is always the conundrum. And I mean, to pick up your point, Howard, and I think both you and Dave made great points here. You know, I think back to my early days as a young manager, and I think I can trump you here, Dave. I was a manager at 19. 19.
My word.
Yeah, that was in 1906. And I was.
Don't tell me, Paul, you parked your company horse outside the building.
Yeah, by the trough, absolutely, completely. And then at 7 o'clock, I had to go and light the gas lamps before going home. No, I was 19, nearly 20. And I mean, just picking up on your point, Howard, I'd somehow got it in my head that my office budget was something I had to achieve on my own. And so I remember one particular occasion, my area manager coming in and I felt was watching me all day, and at the end of the day said to me, "Are you aware of the fact that I've watched you all day?" I said, "Yes, I could feel your eyes burning into my back all day." And she said, "You know, you're working about 5 times harder than anybody else around you, and for the most part, your people are just sitting there with their arms folded, waiting for you to help them, and waiting for you to speak to their candidates, waiting for you to make decisions. You know, we gave you a budget that was a budget for your business, not for you personally." I remember feeling quite aggrieved at the time, as you do when you're at 20. But I did think very hard about what she said, and she was right, of course. And I think the answer to your question, or at least I try to answer your question, is where should people spend more, create more time? And it sort of harks back to the points we've been making. It is with your people, but it comes down to this point about delegation. The thing I wasn't doing in those early days was doing any delegation. I kind of owned everything myself. I think largely because being a big ed at that time, I thought I could do a better job than anyone around me. I think probably I could, if I'm honest. And I was under tremendous pressure to, as we all are, to hit the numbers, to get the revenue made every week, to get good Monday starters, to get my temp numbers up, hit my monthly budgets and all that. And in my brain, because I was the best at virtually everything at that time, well, the easiest way to achieve that was to do it myself. Obviously, stupid way to go about it. And I think that delegation is very much the key to developing a business and succession planning, making sure you're consistently spending time with the people that you value, that you see as being a large part of your future, of developing your business going forward. Those things are incredibly important. Very hard, I think, potentially for people with very small businesses. Clearly, you've got many people or anyone to delegate to. That's clearly a challenge. But as the business improves and increases, then yes, absolutely, consistently try to spend time delegating and training and coaching the people around you, so that ultimately, as you said, Howard, they end up doing your job as well, if not better than you. And that is the key. It's not an easy challenge, but it's absolutely a constant challenge.
So you're saying delegation and time management, delegation and training, creates time that the manager can use. Dave, I just want to ask if you've got a builder in the south, so they can go to Paul's client at the moment, widen the door so he can get his head through the door as he goes out. So, Dave, where do you see the managers that you're sort of working with, how they can create more time?
Well, the first answer to the question is there are no builders available.
We had no chance.
We had Brexit. They all went home, and we're screwed on that front. We all have to wait a long time for builders. It's interesting because when I'm working with the clients I work with, the individuals I work with, I have one question that I ask them regularly. And in the early days when I asked them, they used to kind of roll their eyes, but now they see the purpose of what the question is. And that question is, since we last met, what have you stopped doing that you are never going to do again?
Yeah.
And it kind of throws them, because we all get into this way of working where we all know that if we're busy, we're clearly achieving things. We're achieving things for our people, for our businesses, for our clients and candidates and contractors. But actually, sometimes as leaders, we fall into that trap of just doing too much. And what I try to do is say, well, what are the key things the business needs to focus on? What are the things that you need to focus on personally for your own development? And what are you going to focus on for your people? And then there's a whole list of other things that often the leader of the business will do, whether they're running a 2-person business or a 100-person business, that can be parked or just not done. And one of the things that COVID taught us, and I know we're still in it towards the tail ends of it, is a lot of the ways that we used to work and the things that we used to do suddenly had to stop because of what we were going through. And actually, then you realized they weren't that important. And as leaders, we should be doing only the things that are important, only the things that are aligned to the purpose of the organization, that make our people happy, that get them to perform. So that question for me about what have you stopped doing that you're not going to do again is a really important one, because it gets into a discussion with that with an individual where they say, actually, I was doing this. I was managing all the job boards, for example. But now either I'm not doing that at all, or I've given it to somebody else. To Paul's point, of course, if you don't have many people to delegate that sort of stuff to, then it does become a bit difficult. But my experience of most leaders is they don't delegate because they don't trust that the person they can delegate to will do it as well as they do. Yeah. So they carry on doing it. And therefore that just eats up more and more and more time and denies the people who work for them the opportunity to learn a new skill.
So what I come across is a similar sort of thing. I think they're really super organized, but they're just not organized in the right places. And therefore they believe that, they don't have a management process, a true management process in place. They're working off their to-do list, and it's whatever comes in then goes to the top of their to-do list. So they're always doing what is in their eyes urgent, but it's only what's urgent in that moment in time. So they don't determine really what's urgent and what's important, because it's the urgency. So sometimes, jobs, CVs out, interview boards, etc. It's all the urgency. But really, when you're building a business, is that the true importance of building the business? Yeah. And therefore, I think you've got to look at business plans that are more long-term. And therefore, when you're planning your day, you're looking at what the long-term strategy is rather than what the day-to-day strategy is. And I think that's the thing that I find that most managers do. They're so focused on the day, they're not looking further ahead and what's down the line, and therefore everything that comes in that's urgent today is absolutely worked with rather than delegated out or perhaps pushed back with. And I think you're right, Dave. Two managers keep saying yes to everything, and no to nothing, and therefore get absolutely swamped and can't cope and can't manage because it's just the blocker to them. So what does planning your time then, how does planning your time, or how does planning, let's put planning on its own and then put planning time as a separate one, how does planning then help to create time?
Well, Howard, I think this links to your point about separating urgent versus strategic. And it's very easy. So let's be very clear with everyone listening. It's not that we're unsympathetic. We really understand what it is to work in recruitment businesses. And we know that there are so many things coming at you, particularly as an owner or a leader, on a daily basis that sometimes you can barely breathe. You can hardly feel yourself breathe. That the pressure, the stress is just literally pinning you down. We have all been through that, and it's a consistent experience. So I think we have enormous sympathy for people. It's a terribly difficult thing to be able to separate urgent from strategic, because you can be swamped with urgent consistently. But the problem, I think, for everybody in that position is if you don't remove yourself on a reasonably regular basis to step back from what is going on, the reactive stuff that you and your team are dealing with, then you never move the business forward. It is impossible. I was going to say virtually. Actually, it's impossible to move the business forward because you're not going to find time to identify new opportunities, business opportunities. You're not going to find the time to spend time with clients, developing relationships, building trust, looking to leverage relationships to gain more business. You're going to spend very limited time coaching, training your people, and all of the other good stuff that we've been talking about that ultimately helps to develop a company. Instead, you'll find yourself drowning in orders from clients, particularly at the moment, desperately trying to spin all the plates. Now, as I say, all of us three, have enormous sympathy for all of our clients because we understand the pressures they're going through. We've been in that situation over many years. I've been in the industry for 45 years now. So it's not something I'm unaccustomed to. But at some point in the week, you do have to step away and start planning. Now, we spend a lot of time with our clients looking ahead consistently, normally looking at the year ahead, but very much so at the moment, 90-day sprints. What are we trying to achieve in the next 90, 100 days? What are we going to smash in the next 90, 100 days, get achieved? How does that link into our 12-month plan or even 2 or 3 year plan? And the people that work closely with us, I believe, really appreciate the opportunity to step away from the daily grind, the minutiae, the things that they have to deal with in order to clear their minds, to talk to somebody, to get a different perspective, to consider what they're doing right, to your point earlier. Should I carry on doing what I've always done? Should I change what I'm doing? What should I get rid of doing? What should I start doing? All of those things. We all need that. Every one of us, including us three, you need to just clear your head to establish are we going in the right direction? Are things working correctly? Am I spending enough time with my people? Am I coaching properly? And so on and so on and so on. And we love doing what we do. It's great looking at the strategies. And we love to see the businesses we work with develop. And often that's very clearly linked to the things that the people we work with are planning and have worked towards achieving. But it's not without, as I say, its challenges and not without our sympathies. We know the problems that people have, but you have to create time. It's non-negotiable. You have to create time.
Dave?
It's interesting in the question, Howard, you asked, why does planning help to create time? And that kind of assumes that you have a plan. And lots of companies don't actually have a plan. They work well, they're profitable, they grow. So it's not a criticism in that respect, but they don't have a plan. When we did our session, November time, I think, on planning, there was that wonderful quote. It's always been one of my favorite quotes, was that there wasn't a flood when Noah built the ark. And it's that sense of you've got to plan for what may be just around the corner. Good example, none of us knew what was going to come in the last couple of years. But if you've got a plan for your business that's fairly rooted down, you can navigate almost anything.
Yeah.
And I think having a plan creates time because it shows you what you can work on, what you should work on, and what you shouldn't work on. But in the absence of a plan, then you're operating in a vacuum. Now, some people, I think, some leaders operate really well in a vacuum. They operate flying by the seat of their pants really, really well. I work for someone who I don't think ever had a plan, and the leadership skill that they most displayed was curiosity. We were all curious about what on earth we were going to do that day, or where we were going, or how we were going to. But we followed him because we just didn't believe quite how the way was operated, and it seemed to work. But I would say there are very, very few people who are like that. So I think having a plan in whatever way that plan is written down, I think having a plan is really important. And if it's not a rigid 3-year plan, but it is something that gets you through the next quarter, then that's going to help you develop time, because you'll only work on the things that are on the plan.
So I absolutely agree that we should be working on a plan, but I also think that people naturally have that plan. They just fail to actually look at how they sort of execute the plan. So if you think about if you're planning a journey, the important thing is, what do? You plan the journey in chronological order, don't you? And you plan the journey to what you're doing at the end, what you're going to be doing when you get there, to what you need all the way through. And so naturally, most of us do that as a really good plan. And what wastes your time is you're suddenly driving halfway there, you say, oh, I forgot to get this. You've got to stop and turn around. Oh, I forgot to do this. So without that plan, you haven't got that. So what we tend to do is we plan the whole journey and think about it, but then we start to plan what's essential. So if you're going somewhere in the car, what's essential is, have you got fuel? Have you got money? Have you got a phone? Do you know what your traffic is? Who's in your car? What are their needs? What are their needs when you get where you're going, etc.? So having that plan and then putting it in a priority list in a chronological order saves a massive amount of time of backtracking, getting sidetracked, or having to stop dead in your tracks because you forgot something. And they're the bits that actually waste your time, because you actually haven't planned to actually utilize your time in the best way. So to me, I think most of us have got that in there. You know, how often people run out of petrol? Not very often. And that's because they haven't planned what they're doing. So I think we've most got part of that planning internally already in us. It's how do we get it out and use it in a business process? And so to me, what's urgent? What do we need? Put it in a chronological order and then work it. As other things come in that may be on top of that, yes, you may usurp part of your plan, but then you're back to, what am I going to say yes to? I need to say no to something because I can't fit everything in from there. We talk an awful lot about delegation. Why does delegation create time?
Look, it's hard to separate delegation from coaching. Those two things are essentially interlinked. How do you delegate to an individual or people in your business if you're not spending time coaching and developing them? You're back to that awful sort of vicious circle, as I described myself in those early years, of not spending time coaching my people, thinking that I had to do it myself or I was the best person suited to that task. And it's that circle because people don't develop, they don't grow, and therefore you can't delegate anything and you end up continuing to do everything yourself. It's just not a good place to be. So if to answer this question, you have to talk about spending time coaching, understanding people's training, coaching, development needs, and putting time aside to make sure that happens. Whether it's you doing the nurturing and training or coaching, or others in your organization, or external assistance and support, whatever it takes, you have to do it. Now, I mean, this also, I think, links to subject we've been talking about a lot recently about staff recruitment and retention. Because if people aren't being developed, you're not delegating to them, they're not learning, they're not being stretched or challenged, ultimately they'll leave you. That's just a fact. Most people, and I do mean most people, are not particularly happy to work indefinitely in the same role forever and a day. At some stage, they feel they need to move on because they need to grow. They feel bored. They don't particularly feel challenged by their role any longer. So you are compelled to coach and train and develop people if you're going to retain great talent in your business. The upside, of course, is you keep people longer in your company. And of course, you're in a great position to be able to start gradually delegating more and more and more to that individual, to give them the opportunity to learn and stretch and be challenged. Part of this, I think, though, is also, and I think everyone listening will understand this very clearly, being prepared to allow people you delegate to make mistakes. And who are we, any of us, to feel that people cannot make mistakes, since we all consistently make them ourselves. And for many people, and I'm one of them, I have to get my fingers burned in order to learn. I'm one of those dopey people that, if I was cleverer, I would actually sit down and read things more thoroughly and or whatever. But no, I charge in like a raving lunatic in an anxiety to learn as fast as I can and make mistakes. But when I do, I learn fast, I grow quickly, and I develop. Now, there are better ways to learn, but you often find, particularly when you're really in the muck and the bullets, that even though people around you aren't necessarily ready for some of the things you need to delegate to them, they will often rise to the occasion, albeit making a few errors here and there. But through those errors, will develop and grow and learn. And so this thing, the answer to your question, Howard, is I think the two things are absolutely in my brain interlinked. You've got to coach, you've got to develop people, nurture people in order to put them in a place where you can consistently delegate more and more to them. Make yourself redundant is what we tell every person we work with, ultimately, and that is the goal, to get to a point where you've got more time on your hands to dedicate to your people and indeed to your clients.
Dave?
Yeah, as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, I don't think that we three are wise enough, because all the slides we've had are old men with long beards. So I think the first piece of advice. Here you go.
Are you talking about me?
Well, he's not on the star. She counts. So clearly, some sort of facial hair is really important if you are going to give advice. The thing about delegation is, who wants to do it all themselves? I know when you're running a business, you have the ultimate desire, because it's your business, it's your time, you've sacrificed money, investment, kids stuff, time, all sorts of stuff, because it's your business and you're passionate about it. But if you're like me, you don't want to do it all yourself. You do want to get others involved. And the faster that you can get others involved, the faster you can grow, because the load is spread and you can grow. And I just look at the companies that I've been working with over the past 3 or 4 years, even prior to Jump, that we now work with at Jump. And the ones that have grown the fastest are the ones where the leaders have let go more quickly than the ones where the leaders haven't let go more quickly. And that includes during COVID times as well. And they've navigated the last couple of years quite successfully. And they've just said, right, let's get an ops director in to do some of the work that I was doing, because my skill is actually with the clients and winning business. So I'm going to pay somebody a reasonably good salary to do some of the work that I was doing. That work is going to get delegated. I'm going to focus on the clients. If I can win 2 more clients, that's going to be X amount of revenue for us. The business is going to grow. I'll hire 2 people. That will carry on. And then another 2 people come in. But one of the companies I started working with, 4 years ago now, had 9 people. They've now got 60. They've got 3 offices around the world, and they're going for it. And it's not just because they're delegated. It clearly isn't that simple. But they made that decision that whilst the buck may stop with the 2 guys that own it and run it, they've just got to get as many people on board as they can and give them valid work to do. So from a delegation point of view, in answer to your question, I think it's really important to delegate, because the time that you create is the time that, as business owners, you spend getting new business, getting new clients. And strangely, often when you get new clients, you get more business coming in and your business grows.
Yeah. So completely agree that is the art of delegation, isn't it? Passing it out. And we all know that most people fear delegating, as Annette said. Even though we hate doing it, we should be doing it. But what we're thinking about is our people and empowering our people and driving our people. And if we think about empowering our people, then it is about giving them the opportunity to step up and the opportunity to do something more. And as Paul says, that's all about that career path and driving that career path with those people. But also we've got to start to think about is what people's key strengths are. That, where my weakness is, someone else might have a strength. So why not give them that to do and delegate that to do and admit that I have that weakness and empower somebody to help me because that's their strength. Again, you're now being a bit more humble to people. There's a bit of humility involved in that. But what you're doing is you're pulling people up to your level and giving them that you make them feel as worthy as you, if not more worthy of your time, by giving part of your time to them of the work that they need to do. So to me, delegating is absolutely crucial to empower your people and retain them longer. But it's how you delegate and what you're delegating down and how you're giving it to the people, I think, that's important. So delegate things that are people's strengths, not things that they're going to hate doing just because you hate doing it. And that's sometimes what lots of people do delegate. I'm going to hit all the things I hate doing, and rather than things I like doing. Last week on the World Summit, there was one of our clients gave an absolute great comment on one thing. So I want to know how tech can help a leader create time. Dave,
So,
let's go to Dave first.
Dave first. Go on.
Yeah, let's go to Dave first.
Well, I'm going to just throw maybe a little spanner in the works here, only to say that as leaders of recruitment businesses, we get bombarded by people selling us tech as the answer to all of our problems. We can find candidates faster, we can contact people faster, we can do this, we can do that, we can do the others. And for all of those people that aren't playing Wordle at the moment, there's tech for everything. There's literally tech for everything. And I think the skill as a leader is actually finding out which is the tech that is going to serve your business best, rather than having a tech stack that's so enormous, you kind of look at it and think, wow, look at what I'm spending here. But the bottom line is it getting you more candidates? Is it getting you more contractors? Is it making your business less frictionless or more? Is there less friction in your business? If the answer to those questions is no, no, and no, then it isn't a tech answer. I'm not naive enough to think, of course, that there is a tech answer to certain things that we need in our business. But I do find quite a lot of business leaders love the next bright, shiny thing, and they'll buy it, and then they find there's no API link to the last good, shiny thing that they bought. And then suddenly they end up with 5 or 6 pieces of software that don't talk to each other, that cost quite a lot of money, that's quite difficult to manage, that one of them gets bought by Bullhorn or Access or somebody like that. And before you know it, you've got a whole pile of stuff that actually I'm not sure is helping you grow your business. So I'm passionate about getting the right tech, but for me, it's got to be tech that answers your strategic question rather than because it's the next new thing. So that may be a little bit of a controversial point, H. But
I had this conversation with a client yesterday about changing tech, and I said, if you're going to look at new CRMs, it's like buying clothes. You've got to go buy the clothes that fit and suit you. Don't just go out buy what's on the latest catwalk, because some of those things on the latest catwalk will look absolutely ridiculous and won't suit you. So find out what suits you first and then implement that tech. So if you went back to what we talked about last week on the World Summit, one of the clients came out and said she changed her CRM and invested quite heavily in tech. And they're changing their CRM, and by working closely with the CRM provider, training their staff properly to work it, and then streamlining it all the time, to going back and finding how they can make things better and improving things, has given their temp team an extra 8 hours a week working. Now, if we think about that, if I'm competing against that business, my 5 hours a week, my 5 days a week versus their 5 days a week, well, actually, they're cramming 6 days work now because they got an extra 8 hours compared to I am. So I'm going to sort of lose to them with what they're doing. Again, when I've worked with another agency, when we put a timesheeting system in, we save them 2.5 days a week in the back office. So the back office could now spend that 2.5 days chasing debts. We got their debt down hugely to where it should be. But the knock-on effect of that was it gave their sales team an extra 2 hours a week, because they weren't fielding calls from complaining clients and candidates that they hadn't been paid correctly. So you've got to start to think, well, you're right what you're saying, Dave. The tech has to fit the business, and there has to be a purpose around the tech. But what we tend not to do is we get tech in, but we don't train it, we don't develop it, and we don't keep encouraging that tech. So I was thinking, if you bring tech in, it's about what's the strategy, how do we execute that, and do the people like it? And the people being your clients, your candidates, your consultants, and how can your supplier help you improve that tech? And so always going back, and I would say you need to be a pain in the butt to your tech providers on how to do things quicker, faster, better. Mr. Jacobs.
I'm not sure what else I can add to your 2
Thank you,
points.
Mr. Jacobs. Moving on.
All I will say to this point is that if you are judicious, you choose your tech correctly, and I think you made some great points. It can create tremendous time, and time that you guys, your guys in the business, can use to do the things that we do so well, which is to create relationships with clients and candidates, and develop new opportunities. To use our human skills. If the tech is there to do the things that at a quicker pace, i.e., finding candidates, tracking candidates, and so forth, and it can do it more accurately, more succinctly, and so forth than we can as human beings. Well, if it's at the right price and it gives you time to enable you to be more customer focused, then I'm all for it. The truth is that we live in this bizarre era, if you like, where technology is moving at such a rapid pace. And you're right, you've got to be careful you don't buy the next shiny new thing. It needs to fit your business and at the right price. And read the small print. Look at the notice periods. I had a conversation with a client this morning, won't mention the particular organisation, refusing to give a reasonable notice period. You have to buy in for 2 years, no exit in that 2 years, and so forth. Well, I mean, most people would think pretty hard about that, I think. So I think you have to be extremely careful. But there's no doubt that all recruitment businesses will have an array of tech inside the next 5 years that will help them to manage their relationships with candidates and clients to a greater degree than they presently do on a human basis.
So can I move on?
I've got to say, I'm now smiling, PJ, because at 11:35 on the 2nd of February, you said for the first time ever, I don't think I've got anything more to add.
And then I said something.
And then added a whole load. There's no stopping Mr. Jacobs when he gets going.
going. And it was good.
Yeah, I thought, thank you very much indeed.
I'm not sure. Karen Deep, one thing that we are doing, Karen Deep's asked a question. I'd be great at talking about different areas of the job where tech can be applied. One thing that we're going to start doing in the next versions of the webinars, we're going to start to bring more clients in onto the webinars and have conversations with clients about what's going on and things like that. Yeah. So I will potentially hold you that to Karen Deep and come back to you on that. But here's a question back to you guys. Okay, we're sort of running short on time. I've got 2 questions to ask, so I want to make sure we hit these questions. So I'm going to change the question order around. So I think this is a really important question. Does culture help to create time? If so, what culture should you be growing?
Okay, so I'll be brief, Howard. A nurturing culture is the answer for me.
Stop.
It's making sure that, as I said at the very top of this discussion, you're spending time with your people, and most of your time is there dedicated to supporting and growing them. Because if you get that culture, if you get that caring, embracing culture, that supportive culture, then it creates time. Because as we said earlier, coaching, taking care of your people creates the space for you to delegate. And that culture will ultimately mean people will be retained in your business. They will stay in your business to develop long-term careers, which shouldn't be difficult, because developing a long-term career is going to be attached to the growth of your business and career opportunities. These things are all interlinked. So there you go, as succinct as Paul Jacobs can be, Howard.
Goodness gracious me. Dave.
Yeah, I mean, clearly culture is the thing that drives performance. And what we know of now is we have a lot of our people are working from home still. And a lot of our people will probably continue to work from home because they don't want to come in. And they have proven that they can perform well from home. So where it makes sense, we should have them at home. So therefore, you have a remote culture and you have an office culture. And in that, you have one culture. And time would seem to be more well used working from home than it does when you have travel in and out of the office. But culture seems to develop well in the office. So I think as a leader, that's something that we have to get to grips with, that if we want to hire people and retain people, LinkedIn did a survey last month, I think, just as we were beginning to look to hire, and they put an ad out that said flexible working. This was for recruitment companies, flexible working. And the companies that had flexible working and well-being in their ads had 80% more responses than companies that just spoke about work that was office-based.
Yeah, I can well believe that, yeah.
So you look at the culture, to answer that question about culture and time, it's, well, the people that aren't working for us, what do they want? What type of culture do they want to work in? And the people that are working for us, what type of culture do they want to work in? And if we can get that balance right, and maybe changing our mindsets where it's appropriate, we will find that we do have a lot of time. Most of the companies that I'm working with have at least one day a week where the people are working from home, and it hasn't altered their performance at all. Some of them still have the flexible working, home and office. Some of them, well, not many, in fact only one, is said everybody has to be in the whole time.
So it's interesting, isn't it? So when we start to think about what you two have said there, I always think that culture, when you start to create a really good culture, what you've got to do is remove the blockers that's that's in the business that actually waste people time. So if you think about what you've just said there, Dave, time is almost viewed as linear, isn't it? It has a start and an end date. You must be at work at 9 o'clock. You must finish work at 5:30. It also has then a view that time is an unlimited supply because there's a deadline, there's a milestone. So if we fail to hit that deadline or milestone, therefore it creates pressure, complacency, and it devalues your culture.
Yeah.
Other cultures see time as sort of endless, don't they? It's sort of an endless product, where they place value on doing the right things, and that creates harmony. So if we compare and contrast what you're saying there, if we actually start to think about doing the right things for our clients and candidates and our consultants, then we start to create a nurturing and developing relationship. However, if we start to put a limit on time, then we're setting a precedent that time versus, say, relationships prevents that clarity because people are rushing, because they get frustrated, because they're always up against the clock. So we've got to think about how we can change that, how we can change those sort of things. So I always think about what we've been talking to our clients about their clients constantly. We only find out about jobs when they want a job tomorrow, or can we get this person filled by the next week? And yet clients are planning constantly 12 months, 18 months in advance their requirements that they need, and yet we're never brought into that. So they create a time bound for us, which creates our frustration, where if we actually were in bed with our clients and we're part of that planning process, it means that we create a different type of opportunity, which isn't so pressured by the limited time that we put on the time that we have to service them. So I think culture is really important to create harmony, and to create harmony, we have to expand the boundaries of time, because time is actually limitless. It doesn't have a deadline.
Yeah.
So the last question,
very profound, Howard.
Very profound. I can be profound some days.
Howard, grow a beard.
I'm growing a beard. I'm already an old man, and I haven't grown a beard yet, but I will grow one. So the last question then, which will please you both: coaching and managing. Why does one eat time and the other create time?
I think we've probably answered this pretty well already. So what we've been saying throughout the webinar is that coaching people, enabling you to delegate tasks, to create career opportunities for people, creates time for you and for the business. Managing is about getting jobs, chores, tasks done. It's essential, but it eats time, eats your time. So in a situation where you're able to delegate, you grow people, you have a team of people, you create succession planning, you allow people to take on more and more responsibility, it creates time for you, the leader, the manager, the owner, to do the things that will help you to develop your business further.
And what I would say about coaching is, please don't assume that because you're the leader, you're the only one that should be coaching.
Absolutely.
When I gave the example of the company that had grown from 9 to 61, 62, whatever it is now, in that business, I think I'm right in saying now there are 46 people that are coaching, that know how to coach other people in the business. They have a buddy system for everybody that comes on board. They have a way of coaching for people that are remote versus people in the office, and all the people are coaching. So it's a skill that they have trained throughout their organization, and it's a great skill to have.
And it's a skill that people will pass down to others, obviously. Yeah. And it's, if you look at sort of the great teams that have evolved in any type of sport or any type of environment, coaching has been at the absolute helm of that. And there's not one person coaching. There is a multiple people coaching all the time within that. And that's what it sort of heads. So I think if you're managing, there's only a limited number of managers and they dictate what's going on, but you can have an unlimited number of coaches that are helping people from either mindset, development set, etc., etc. So I think coaching is part of the culture and needs to become part of the culture in order to drive things forward and move things forward constantly. Guys, anything else that you want to add on saving time? It's one of those topics we could talk an awful long time about. Is there anything else that you guys want to add on saving time before we sort of close off for today?
Yeah, I have a complaint to make. Dave Pye has spent more time talking today than I have on the webinar, and this is a trend that I'm intent on stopping immediately. This cannot carry on.
And I was just going to say, we have to stop, Howard, because we've run out of time.
And I would like to agree with Andy Turner. I'd also like to wish Andy Turner, of first choice, a happy birthday, because they're 29 years old today as a recruitment agency. So happy birthday, Andy. And I would like to second, it's very hard when you're talking and all you can hear is thump, thump, thump in the background of Paul Jacobs, the noisiest typer. I thought it was outside someone mending my fence, but it's not. It's Paul Jacobs typing. Next week will be saved from Paul Jacobs typing because next week
Paul, you know what that means? That Paul's done his shopping.
That's correct. Paul is now
delivery is on the way. He has
more coffee.
He has ordered his next week Amazon delivery. So we're going to save you from Paul's typing next week, because next week we are presenting at the Recruitment Expo in London. So if any of you want to come to the Recruitment Expo in London and meet up with us, we're there Tuesday afternoon and all day Wednesday. So, feel free to come along, catch up with us. If you want us to introduce us to any of the suppliers, etc., again, please come along, drop us an email beforehand, and we'll be happy to introduce you to anybody that help you move your business forward. We'll be back the week after that with a new set of webinars and a new set of topics to cover. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your time. As always, guys, it's been a pleasure. Mr. Jacobs,
thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody.
For your typing and your input. Mr. Pye, thank you for your levity. And I look forward to seeing you all next week.
See everybody. Take good care, everyone.
And I'm going to look up to see what levity means. I think it's a compliment.